The letter came on a Monday. No return address, no postage mark, just my name in elegant black ink. I almost tossed it in the trash, assuming it was some junk mail meant for someone else. But curiosity has always been my weakness. The envelope was thick, the paper inside heavier than usual, like it was trying to carry more than words. Inside was a short note. Eli, the farm is now yours. Follow the rules. Do not stray. Uncle Vernon. Uncle Vernon. I hadn't seen or heard from him in over 20 years. He was a strange figure from my childhood, always lingering in the corners of family gatherings, muttering about shadows in the wheat and keeping his boots by the door at all times. I thought he was just eccentric, harmless, if not a little paranoid. I didn't even know he was still alive, much less that he had left me his farm. 2 days later, I was standing at the edge of the property. The place looked like it had been yanked out of time, weathered barns, rusted gates, and fields that stretched so far they blurred into the horizon. Wind brushed through the corn like whispers, and the farmhouse, an old Victorian 2-story, stood with its windows like hollow eyes watching me arrive. On the porch, taped to the front door, was another envelope. Inside, a list. No introduction, no explanations, just 8 handwritten rules. 1. Lock all doors before sunset. Every single one. 2. Do not answer the knocking after dark. It is not a person. 3. Feed the scarecrow every Thursday at midnight. 4. Never touch the red soil near the east field. 5. If you see lights moving in the barn, stay inside and pray. 6. The well is not dry. Don't listen to what it says. 7. If the crows stop cawing, hide under the kitchen table. 8. Never, ever leave the gate to the root cellar open. The handwriting was familiar. It was Uncle Vernon's. I stared at the list for a long time, half expecting some old prank show host to pop out and laugh at me. But the air was heavy, too heavy. I felt it the second I stepped onto the porch. Something wasn't right. That night, I moved in. I didn't believe in ghosts or monsters. I believed in creaky floors, raccoons in the attic, and old pipes making stranger noises than they should. Still, when the sun began to set, I went around and locked every door. Just in case. There were more than I remembered, 3 to the porch, 2 out back, a cellar door, and 1 small entrance behind the pantry. The farm breathed in darkness like an old lung. The creaks of the house turned into groans. I sat in the living room with a flashlight, listening. Then, just after midnight, came a knock at the front door. Not a timid knock. A slow, deliberate pounding. I froze. My rational brain tried to take over. Maybe a traveler. Maybe a lost hiker. But no one wandered this far off the grid. I reached for the knob, but my eyes caught the list on the kitchen table. Do not answer the knocking after dark. It is not a person. Asterisk asterisk. I backed away slowly. The knocking came again. Louder. Then again. My heart pounded in rhythm. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more. I turned off the flashlight and crouched behind the couch. The knocking stopped. I waited. Then, softly, almost apologetically, a voice came from the other side. Eli, it's your uncle. Open up. I forgot to tell you something. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I forgot the 9th rule. There was no 9th rule. The voice changed then, its tone bending and cracking like splintered wood. Open the door. I didn't. I couldn't. Eventually, silence returned. When I finally stood and peeked through the curtain, the porch was empty. But a single muddy boot print sat pressed into the wood. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, the air was eerily still. Not a single crow in the sky. The cornfields looked taller, denser. I checked the list again, fingers trembling. If the crows stop cawing, hide under the kitchen table. But it was daylight now, and I convinced myself I was being paranoid. I grabbed an old coffee tin and walked toward the scarecrow in the north field. Rule 3. Feed the scarecrow every Thursday at midnight. It was Thursday. It was morning, yes, but I figured feeding it early wouldn't hurt. The scarecrow stood tall, too tall. Its arms outstretched, head tilted toward the house as if it had been watching. Its eyes were marbles, red glass orbs that reflected too much light. The stuffing leaked from its chest, and there was something, bones maybe, jutting from its legs. I placed a dead rat from the tin at its feet. That's what Uncle Vernon used to do. I remembered now, faint memories of him tossing dead vermin at the scarecrow like offerings. As I turned to leave, I heard a whisper. Midnight. I spun around. No one was there. But the scarecrow's head, asterisk asterisk, it had turned, asterisk asterisk. Its red eyes were now staring straight at me. I ran. By the time the sun began to set, the wind had picked up. I locked every door again, twice. I made sure the gate to the root cellar was shut and chained. I avoided the red soil near the east field. I turned off the lights and waited. At midnight, I fed the scarecrow. A fresh squirrel, found already dead by the barn. I tossed it at the straw feet and backed away, watching. Nothing moved. But as I stepped back inside, something was sitting on the kitchen table. A note. It hadn't been there when I left. And I hadn't heard anyone come in. It read, "You're late." I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, the well was whispering. Literally. I heard it from the kitchen window, soft murmurs like wind through a tunnel. But when I walked outside and leaned over its edge, the voice became clear. "Eli, help me. I'm trapped down here." It was my voice. Perfectly replicated. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the cracked stones around the well. My voice echoed again. "Don't you remember falling? Don't you remember the cold?" I ran back inside and slammed the door. Rule 6. The well is not dry. Don't listen to what it says. Asterisk asterisk. I stayed inside the rest of the day, watching from the windows. But the farm watched me too. The scarecrow shifted again. The crows were gone. And just before nightfall, I noticed the gate to the root cellar was wide open. I swear I had locked it. I grabbed the list, trying to find something, anything, about what to do if the rules failed. But there were no instructions. Just 8 rules. That was it. I closed the gate. Chained it again. But I noticed claw marks on the door. Deep gouges, as if something had tried to claw its way out. Or in. That night, there were no knocks. No voices. No footsteps. But the house breathed louder. The windows fogged over from the inside. And just after 2 a.m., I found a new note nailed to the inside of my bedroom door. It said, Rule 9. Never trust what you see in the mirror after 3 a.m. I hadn't written it. But I could see my reflection in the mirror across the room. And it wasn't doing what I was. I woke with a start, heart pounding, the sound of a rooster crowing cutting through the heavy silence like a razor. Morning sun leaked in through slats in the old shutters, bathing the bedroom in cold, dusty light. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was, until I caught the faint scent of soil and mold, and it all came rushing back. The farm. The rules. The thing outside the barn. I forced myself up, body still aching from the sleepless night and the fear that had gripped me in the dark. The notebook lay on the nightstand where I dropped it, pages slightly crumpled from my frantic flipping. I picked it up again and flipped to Rule 4, the one I had violated. Do not enter the barn between 3:03 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. No matter what you hear. I had broken that rule. I had heard something, scratching, whispering, the creak of wood under heavy footsteps, and like an idiot, I'd stepped inside. And I had seen eyes. Or something that had eyes. It hadn't chased me, hadn't attacked. But it had watched. I moved like a machine through the early morning routines. Feeding the chickens. Checking on the goats in the pen. My mind buzzed like a beehive. Every sound was too loud, every shadow too sharp. And I couldn't stop looking at the barn. It looked ordinary in the daylight, like any other old wooden structure with faded red paint and a sagging roof. But I knew what I'd seen inside it, or at least what I thought I'd seen. And somehow, daylight didn't make it feel any safer. After breakfast, I tried to call someone. Anyone. But the phone line was still dead. I walked to the edge of the property where I remembered there being reception on my first day here, and held my phone high. 1 bar. Enough. I called my friend Ben. He answered on the second ring. "Dude. You okay?" I've been trying to reach you for days. Yeah, I said, though my voice sounded brittle even to me. Yeah, I'm at the farm. It's weird out here, man. I think something's wrong. What do you mean? Like, haunted wrong. Not haunted. Just off. There's this list of rules my grandfather left. And they're not just eccentric old man stuff. They're serious. I broke one last night, and someone, was in the barn. Ben paused. What kind of rules? I read a few out loud, including the one about the barn. He chuckled at first, then fell silent. So what now? You're staying? I don't know. I thought about leaving. But the keys to the truck are gone. My phone line's dead. And there's more, things that don't add up. I found blood in the tool shed. Old blood, dried. And I swear something moved in the cornfield this morning. I don't want to leave until I figure out what's really going on. Okay. Be careful. Seriously. If you can't get out by tonight, I'll come up tomorrow. Thanks, I said. Just don't come after dark. By midday, I decided to explore the basement. It was listed under Rule 7. Do not descend into the basement unless the bell chimes exactly 3 times at noon. If it does, bring the mirror and descend backward. That detail made my skin crawl. Backward. With a mirror. I waited at the kitchen table as the old grandfather clock approached noon. The pendulum ticked with a maddening rhythm. When the hour struck, the bell chimed once, twice, and then a long pause. I held my breath. Then a third chime. Clear. Hollow. My stomach turned. I found the mirror in the hallway closet, just where a sticky note in the notebook said it would be. It was small, handheld, with a cracked corner. I gripped it tightly and stood at the top of the basement stairs. I didn't want to do this, but part of me had to. I needed answers. I stepped backward, one foot after another, using the mirror to guide myself. The basement was pitch black, and the stairs groaned under my weight. With each step, the air grew colder. I could see my breath when I exhaled. The mirror shook in my hand, but I dared not look away from it. The moment I reached the bottom, I knew I wasn't alone. The mirror revealed it, movement behind me. A shape. Thin. Pale. Bent at wrong angles. Its head cocked to one side like it was listening. I turned around. Nothing. I swept the flashlight across the room. Boxes. Shelves. An old furnace. No creature. But the chill hadn't left the air. And when I looked into the mirror again, the thing was closer. I bolted back up the stairs, mirror clutched to my chest, heart pounding so hard I thought it would stop. Whatever it was, it couldn't be seen directly. Only through the mirror. Why had my grandfather kept something like that in the basement? That night, I didn't sleep. I barricaded the door with furniture. Kept the shotgun by my side. Not that I was sure it would help. Whatever these things were, they didn't seem human. At 2:59 a.m., I sat rigid in bed, counting the seconds. I wasn't going near the barn again. Not tonight. But at 3:10 a.m., I heard something tapping on the window. I didn't move. The room was dark, lit only by moonlight. But I saw the outline of a hand on the glass. Long fingers. Too long. Pale skin stretched tight over bone. It tapped once more, then slowly slid downward, leaving a smear. I whispered to myself, over and over. Asterisk, don't respond. Don't look. Don't open anything. Asterisk. By 3:33 a.m., it was gone. The next morning, I found a new entry in the notebook. One that hadn't been there before. It was handwritten, in ink that looked fresh. You're being watched. Follow the rules. Or they will make more. I flipped through the pages. New ones had been added. The notebook was growing. Rule 13. If you see your reflection blink before you do, it's too late. Don't run. Don't scream. Just shut your eyes. Rule 14. Do not dig. Ever. Rule 15. Something is under the house. Don't feed it, no matter what it promises. I dropped the notebook like it had burned me. What the hell had I inherited? Later that day, I ventured to the edge of the cornfield. Something about it always made me uneasy, especially the scarecrow in the center. It had changed. I was sure of it. It was now wearing a wide-brimmed hat and what looked like my grandfather's coat. I moved closer. The hat's brim cast a shadow over its face. I could see the fabric shifting slightly in the wind, but there was no wind. And then it twitched. Just a small movement, like a finger curling. I backed away slowly. That night, I added my own note to the back of the notebook. They are real. All of it. The rules aren't just rules. They're protection. I don't know who or what is watching me, but I will survive. I have to. Then I locked the notebook in the drawer beside the bed and tried to convince myself it would all make sense soon. But deep down, I knew the truth. The farm didn't want me to leave. And maybe, just maybe, neither did I. The silence that followed after I tossed the page into the fire felt heavier than any noise. The paper curled and blackened, releasing a faint hiss as it was consumed. I didn't sleep that night. I kept the lights on, eyes fixed on the darkened hallway outside my bedroom, half expecting some grotesque figure to stumble in. Nothing came. But morning was worse. I walked into the barn just after sunrise. The animals were silent. Not just calm, unnaturally still, as if they'd been paralyzed by fear. The cows didn't moo. The horses didn't stamp. Even the chickens stood frozen in place, eyes glassy, heads tilted toward the rafters. Then I heard it. A slow, deliberate creaking from above. I turned my gaze upward. In the shadows, something crouched in the beams. At first, I thought it was just a bird. But then it shifted, unfolding too many limbs, revealing a glistening pale shape that scuttled backward into the darkness. It wasn't just hiding, it was watching. And now it knew I'd broken a rule. Rule number 3. Never destroy the list. It made sense now. The rules weren't superstition. They were protection. A barrier. A contract. And I had burned part of it. I backed out of the barn, cold sweat clinging to my neck. That thing hadn't attacked me yet, but it would. It was biding its time. I needed to find the rest of the list. Back inside the house, I ransacked the drawers, the bookshelves, even under floorboards. If Grandpa had hidden the rules, he must have known I'd try to be clever. But all I found were strange notes, doodles of shapes I couldn't understand. Circles with lines running through them, eyes that were always open, scribbled phrases like, "It only comes when it's invited," and asterisk, "He speaks from the soil." Asterisk. In the kitchen pantry, behind a false panel, I finally discovered something, a small, leather-bound notebook labeled simply, "Contingencies." Inside were observations. Pages of Grandpa's frantic handwriting. Rule number 5 is critical. She mimics. Don't answer the door unless the knock is exactly 3 beats. Rule number 6. If the wind stops but the leaves move, go to the basement and wait. Rule #9. I saw her again. She wore Grandma's face, but her eyes were like holes. More rules. None of them were on the original list. My blood ran cold as I realized the list I'd been given wasn't complete. It was only a starting point. That night, I stayed inside. I didn't light the fireplace, just in case it offended whatever lurked in the barn. I kept the curtains shut, checked all locks, and kept Grandpa's shotgun within reach. At 11:42 p.m., the knocking began. 3 knocks. Then silence. I held my breath. 3 knocks. Exactly 3. I moved toward the door, gun in hand, but something in me hesitated. This was a trick. I hadn't told anyone I was here. No deliveries. No neighbors for miles. I peeked through the peephole. Nothing. Then, below the frame, I saw a flicker of white movement, just out of view. I whispered to myself, if the knock is exactly 3 beats. But something felt off. I didn't open the door. A voice came through the wood. Soft. Familiar. "Danny, it's your mother." My mother's been dead for 12 years. The voice was calm, sweet, just like I remembered. And it repeated the same thing, over and over. "Danny, it's your mother." Until the cadence changed. It got messier. Like whoever, or whatever, was speaking had forgotten how the words were supposed to sound. "Dayan, Danny, it's your mother." Scraping. Something dragging nails, or claws, down the door. I backed away. Then, silence. I didn't sleep again. In the morning, I checked the porch. No footprints. But there was something smeared on the wood, symbols, drawn in what looked like tar. One of the shapes matched a doodle from Grandpa's notebook. I flipped back through the pages, searching. Next to that shape, Grandpa had scrawled, "If she marks your threshold, she owns the space." I'd been claimed. The next few days blurred together. I started talking to myself, reading the same sentence over and over. I'd wake up to find I was standing in the field, barefoot, hours before dawn. Once, I opened my eyes and I was kneeling in the barn with my forehead pressed to the ground. The animals no longer made sounds. I wasn't sure they were even alive anymore. Just hollow. By the 5th day, I stopped pretending this was still about an inheritance. The farm wasn't land. It was a prison. A ritual site. My family had tended this place not out of pride, but duty. Grandpa hadn't kept the rules because he was superstitious. He was the last line of defense. And I was failing. On the 6th night, I heard something in the cornfield. At first, it was just the rustling of stalks, swaying in the still air. Then, a low voice humming. A lullaby. The same one my grandmother used to sing to me. I should have run. I should have hidden. Instead, I followed it. The corn parted before me. The stalks didn't sway, they moved, opening a path as though welcoming me in. The humming grew louder, softer, surrounding. I walked for what felt like hours until I came to a clearing in the center of the field. In the dirt, perfectly carved, was a circle of bones. And within it, something sat, cloaked in burlap, its face hidden. It stopped humming. Then, without lifting its head, it whispered, "One more rule." The thing rose. Its limbs unfolded in too many directions. Burlap gave way to pale, insectal skin. Its face was blank except for a wide, lipless mouth that stretched from ear to ear. "There is a final rule, Daniel." I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. It took a step closer. "You must never look into the well." The well. I hadn't seen any well. Until that night. When I returned to the house, muddy and shaking, I noticed the cellar door open. The one I always kept locked. Something had dragged the heavy bolt aside. I grabbed the shotgun and descended into the basement, and there, hidden beneath loose boards and dust-covered tarps, was a wooden lid, round, with a rusted metal ring. A well. I should have left. Driven far, far away. But the rules don't let you leave. Not when you've broken them. Not when you've been claimed. I stared down at the lid. It had been chained shut. And now the chains were gone. Something inside was breathing. And I knew, whatever I'd inherited, it wasn't just land, or rituals, or darkness. It was waiting. And soon, I'd have to look. The air in the cellar was wrong. It wasn't just cold, it was still oppressive, like time itself held its breath beneath the earth. Dust hung in the air like mist, shimmering in the beam of my flashlight as I stared down at the uncovered well. The lid had been shoved aside, revealing a yawning mouth of darkness. Wood splinters from the broken chain lay scattered around it, as though whatever had been sealed inside hadn't waited for me to open it, it had let itself out. I didn't look into it. Not yet. But the urge was there. That strange magnetic pull, like gravity for the soul. It wanted me to look. It needed me to. But I remembered the thing in the cornfield. The way it had whispered the rule. It hadn't threatened me. It had warned me. And that meant something worse than it still waited down there. I backed away. I should have left the cellar. Nailed the boards shut and burned the house to the ground. But something had shifted in me. A slow, creeping dread had turned into numb, robotic determination. I needed answers. Grandpa hadn't just left me a cursed farm. He'd left me pieces to a puzzle I didn't yet understand. I spent the next day in the attic. There were boxes up there Grandpa never wanted anyone touching. I forced the old lock on a cedar chest, nearly broke a crowbar trying to pry it open. Inside, I found letters, dozens of them, each addressed to a different name: Malcolm, June, Hartley, Richard, Elena. Every envelope was sealed with red wax, marked with the same odd symbol from the front gate, a spiral inside a handprint. The first letter I opened chilled me more than anything I'd seen in the cellar. Dearest Elena, if you are reading this, it means the barrier has thinned again. The soil shifts. The breath stirs. I've done what I can to reinforce the signs, but the rituals are failing. She grows impatient. I hear her walking in the corn at night. The well must never be uncovered. The list must never be discarded. The rules must be rewritten. Ah. Elena's reply was folded underneath in smaller, tighter handwriting. You were right. It's spreading. The fog doesn't stay on the fields anymore. I saw a man without skin watching me from the orchard. I burned the orchard. More letters. More fragments. But a pattern emerged. There were others. Other farms. Other caretakers. Other rule sets. All of them struggling to contain something ancient, something that feeds on disobedience. And they were all failing. In one letter, Richard had written, "She thrives on broken rules. Every time a rule is ignored, she gains more shape, more voice, more influence." A collective effort, passed down through generations. A secret network of wardens, keeping the darkness bound by a fragile chain of rituals and instructions. Until me. And I'd burned my rule sheet. At sunset, I visited Grandpa's grave for the first time. I don't know what made me go. Maybe guilt. Maybe hope. The old stone was crooked, the dirt slightly sunken. I knelt beside it, clutching the shotgun tight, and whispered, "What did you bring me into, old man?" That night, the wind returned, but it blew backward. I stood on the porch and watched the trees sway in a direction the clouds weren't moving. Dust rose in spirals. Somewhere in the fields, something wailed. Long and low. A death knell. I didn't sleep. At 3:08 a.m., the phone rang. I hadn't used it once since arriving. Didn't even think it worked anymore. I picked up slowly. On the other end, silence. Then static. Then a voice, familiar and slow. "Rule 14, rewrite it." Then the line went dead. I didn't even have 14 rules. But I understood now. New rules were forming. This wasn't just a haunted location. It was an evolving entity. It adapted to resistance. It rewrote the game. The more I fought, the more it learned how to play. So I tried to play smarter. The next morning, I painted the barn door with salt and iron shavings, something I found scribbled in the margins of one of Grandpa's books. I traced the strange spiral hand symbol with chalk on the floorboards of every room. I nailed shut the cellar. And then I wrote my own list. Not the original rules. New ones. On fresh paper, in black ink, I printed carefully. 1. Never enter the cornfield after dusk. 2. Never burn the original list again. 3. If you hear knocking, check the peephole, but never answer. 4. If you see your reflection move independently, run. 5. Keep the barn door sealed in iron. 6. If the wind blows against the trees, go to the attic. 7. Do not look into the well. 8. Never speak your name after midnight. 9. If the phone rings at 3:08 a.m., do not pick up. 10. And above all, 11. Do not make new rules. Asterisk asterisk. I wrote that last one and stared at it for a long time. A paradox. But I felt like it needed to be there. A warning to myself. Or maybe a trap for it. But rules need belief. They need ritual. So I read the list aloud every hour, like a chant. I placed copies in every room. I carved them into the porch rail. And I believed in them. It was working. For a while. Until the scratching returned. From inside the walls. I followed the sound to the upstairs hallway. Behind the floral wallpaper, something moved. Something fast. The walls bulged slightly, just enough to notice if you stared long enough. Then, from beneath the wallpaper, a face pressed through. Featureless. Pale. Wet. It mimicked my breathing. I recited the list out loud, my voice shaking. Do not enter the cornfield after dusk. Do not burn the original list. Do not. The face retreated. The wall fell still. But the moment I turned to leave, the lights in the house turned off. Not flickered. Not shorted. Just ceased. And then I heard the voice. From every wall. Every corner. It wasn't speaking. It was repeating the rules. Back to me. Out of order. Do not speak your name after midnight. Check the peephole. Carve them into the porch rail. It was mocking me. Then it said something I hadn't written. Rule 12, surrender. I ran. I locked myself in the bathroom. The walls were thinner there, but quiet. I barricaded the door with the sink cabinet, lit a candle, and waited for morning. At dawn, I emerged to find the walls stripped. Every room had been torn apart, wallpaper peeled back, insulation clawed out, furniture overturned. On every exposed wall was a symbol. Not paint. Not blood. Charcoal. The same symbols from the letters. But these were wrong. They'd been drawn backward. Like someone was trying to reverse the protections. I fell to my knees. I had no idea what to do. That's when I saw her. Through the window, standing at the edge of the cornfield, facing the house. My mother. Dead 12 years. But she wasn't distorted this time. She wasn't mimicking. She was just standing. Her face calm. Her posture perfect. The way she stood when she was angry but didn't want to show it. I stepped onto the porch. Mom. She didn't speak. She lifted her arm and pointed toward the barn. The door stood wide open, and something was inside. She disappeared without a sound. I grabbed the shotgun and headed toward the barn, my breath shallow. The iron I'd nailed across the door had been torn off, bent like tinfoil. The salt was gone. Not blown away. Asterisk collected. Asterisk. The air smelled like rust and ammonia. Inside, the animals were gone. Only the hay remained, and it moved. Slowly rising and falling, like something breathed beneath it. Then it spoke. I rewrote the list. The voice didn't come from the hay. It came from everywhere. I raised the gun and fired. Hay exploded, but nothing was beneath it. No creature. No trace. Only a spiral carved into the dirt. Deeper than before. So deep it looked like it went to the core of the earth. That night, the cellar door was open again. The well was humming. I don't know how long I was out. The cold bit into my skin, but I couldn't tell if it was night or day when I opened my eyes. The farmhouse ceiling loomed above, faded and warped by time. Every muscle ached. My head throbbed, my ribs screamed, and I tasted blood on my tongue. Grandpa's journal lay beside me. Open. Pages smeared with something dark. Maybe ink, maybe blood. I hadn't broken all the rules. Not yet. But I'd bent them. I'd asked too many questions. I'd ignored the silences. And I let it out of the barn. The wind screamed outside, but it wasn't alone anymore. Something dragged across the roof. Slow, deliberate. Not a raccoon. Not a branch. Something was circling above. I sat up, the pain slicing through my body like glass. My vision blurred, but I saw the shotgun propped beside the door. Loaded. Just like the journal instructed for, Rule 7, on the 7th night, the veil is thin. If you hear it call your name, shoot first, then run. It had been 6 nights. Tonight was the 7th. I forced myself to my feet and looked out the window. The scarecrow in the field was gone. Gone. I stumbled back from the window. My breath came out in ragged clouds, each one disappearing into the cold air of the living room. The fireplace was out. No coals, no warmth. Just dead ash. I reached for the journal again. My grandfather's scrawl ran jagged across the final pages, like he'd written them in a hurry. Asterisk, if you've made it this far, then you know by now this farm was never really ours. We were caretakers. Watchers. Keepers of the door beneath the soil. Every rule was a seal. Every broken rule, a crack. Asterisk. The floorboards above creaked. Not from the wind. From weight. Movement. I grabbed the shotgun and climbed the stairs. Every step felt like a betrayal of instinct. My legs trembled, but I kept moving. The second floor hallway stretched before me. Photos hung crooked, dust motes swirling in the air like ash. One door was open. Grandpa's bedroom. I raised the gun and stepped inside. The room was freezing. His bed was made. Everything just as he'd left it, except for the mirror. It was shattered, shards of glass spread like teeth across the floor. Something had stepped through it. A trail of soot marked the carpet, footprints that shouldn't have existed. They were long, twisted, almost backbent, like whatever left them walked on the top of its feet. I followed the prints. Back down the hall. Into my old bedroom, where I found myself staring into the mirror. Only it wasn't me on the other side. It wore my face. But its smile was wrong. Too wide. Too hungry. And it whispered, "You missed one." The air grew heavier. The walls pulsed. The shotgun shook in my hands. Then the mirror cracked again, and this time it came through. It was like watching a skin unravel. My own face peeled from it like a mask, revealing something pale and wet and glistening beneath. Its eyes were pits. Its hands ended in long, sharp roots, like they'd grown through corpses. It lunged. I fired. The mirror exploded, sending both of us crashing to the ground. The creature shrieked, high and shrill, like rusted metal tearing. It crawled toward me even with half its head missing, leaking black rot that burned through the wood floor. I staggered back and ran. Downstairs. To the cellar. I wasn't supposed to go there. Rule 4. Never open the cellar door after midnight. It was 12:03. I didn't care. The creature howled behind me. The front door was no good. Scratching came from the other side. Multiple voices now. I heard them all whispering my name. I yanked open the cellar door and descended into darkness. The air down there was thick, like syrup. The light bulb flickered, but I saw it at the far wall. A second door. Smaller. Made of iron. Covered in carvings I didn't recognize. The final seal. Asterisk, do not open it. Ever. Asterisk. But it was already ajar. Inside was a void. Not black. Empty. Like reality stopped beyond that frame. And I knew then that was where the rules had come from. Not from my grandfather. From the thing inside. It made the rules to bind itself. Because if it ever got out, it would spread. Feed. Become. I turned back just in time to see the creature leap down the stairs. But it didn't attack me. It stopped at the threshold of the iron door. And bowed. Because that wasn't the real monster. It was a guard dog. And I had just opened its master's cage. The air split. A noise like every scream ever heard echoed backward. The thing stepped through. It didn't walk. It folded through reality. Skinless. Mouthless. But I felt it speak. You have broken them all. And suddenly I understood. The rules weren't just a warning. They were a bargain. I inherited the farm because my grandfather failed. He delayed the inevitable, but eventually someone would slip up. It only needed a sliver. And I was the final crack. The creature raised a hand, and the shotgun rusted to dust in mine. But instead of killing me, it said, "You will write the new rules." It pressed a single icy finger to my forehead, and everything shifted. I woke up on the porch. Morning sun rising. Birds chirping. Normal. Too normal. Until I looked around. The barn was gone. So was the scarecrow. The fields now stretched endlessly. No neighbors. No road. Just the farm. And a blank journal on the porch step, open to the first page. With one sentence written in fresh, trembling ink. Rule 1. Never lie to them. They already know the truth.